What's going on, y'all? First off, I want to say that I hope everybody is enjoying their weekend. I hope that you guys have been drinking responsibly. I know some of you guys have cooked out, partied, etc., and I just hope that everybody out there is feeling fantastic on this beautiful Sunday morning. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into these topics. So the first thing that I want to discuss is Matt Gaetz, because I'm shocked that Matt Gaetz came to the defense of Diddy. And he's basically saying that the reason why Diddy is in the position that he's in is because he's black. Now, just to be truthful and upfront about everything, Matt Gaetz is a very controversial figure. There's evidence that shows that he paid for SEX. There's also evidence that displays that he had SEX with a girl that was only 1'7". He used rugs, and I'm paraphrasing there, regularly. And there was also an investigation as it pertains to allegations of SEX trafficking, amongst other things that Gaetz was allegedly tied to. And also we have to remember that Gaetz was Trump's first pick for Attorney General, but Gaetz resigned from the House back in November. Now, with all of that said, right, and with the knowledge of Matt Gaetz not being a great human being himself, I'm still particularly shocked that he came out and defended Diddy in the fashion that he did, because, you know, it's not often that anybody from that side of the aisle comes to the defense of a black wealthy man, and he absolutely stood 10 toes down and defended the fact that he believed that Diddy was overcharged here. So what I want to do right here is insert the clip of Matt Gaetz talking about this whole Diddy situation, and then I'll be back.
Sean Diddy Combs. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard about the federal RICO and trafficking trial regarding his conduct. Diddy went from being the face of black excellence and hanging out with President Obama to being jailed, deprived of his freedom, charged and tried for heinous crimes. Today we learned from the jury that Diddy has been acquitted of the most serious charges and was found guilty of violating the Mann Act, which is a federal statute. We'll talk about that in moments. Let me note, we make no claim that Diddy is a good person. Anyone who would raise a hand and strike a woman in the manner he did certainly has terrible issues and should be held accountable for that. Prior to being charged criminally, Diddy was sued by Cassie Ventura, who was assaulted in this video. He paid her $20 million to settle that claim. Ventura was paid an additional $10 million from the hotel where this video was taken. But neither this video nor any evidence presented at trial proves RICO, which is typically used against the mob, or sex trafficking, which involves making people do things that they don't want to do and don't consent to. That's a different thing than assault. Vishbura and I make a podcast show called Anchorman, and weeks ago we called it. We said that Diddy would not be found guilty on the trafficking and RICO charges levied by the government.
Does Diddy get convicted?
You know what? I don't think so.
Oh, hot take.
Yeah, no.
Make the case for Diddy's innocence, Vishbura.
Cassie being the main witness there, they got her admitting that she was she had claimed that he her or assaulted her, but then was hanging out with him and having with him after that this incident took place.
You're going to respond very unfavorably to that characterization by the prosecution for, because of some of those facts that have come out. And when I heard and saw this coverage of the Diddy thing, I thought that there would be this mountain of victims who had been forcibly coerced into things they didn't want to do. And now what it looks like is that he's definitely guilty of domestic, which is terrible. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been charged with domestic, right, which is interesting. If he were charged with that, I think he would be convicted.
Right.
But that's a state matter, and this is a federal prosecution. And so what they're having to prove, they have precisely one victim.
Right.
One, Cassie Ventura.
No.
And that victim is in text messages saying she hopes the next freak off isn't the last freak off, but the first freak off for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And, if Cassie regretted those, that's awful, but it's at least a mixed message. I guess could be two reasons that she had participation in these events. One, that she was forcibly coerced or extorted, and the other, she didn't want to lose her man. And she did things she didn't want to do because she didn't want to lose her man. Now, one of those is probably trafficking and a crime. And the other one definitely isn't.
Right.
And this fact pattern seems to meld the two pretty substantially. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I think he should definitely be convicted of the crimes that he obviously committed, but those seem to be state crimes around a... It does not seem to be a federal trafficking case.
There you have it. That's almost precisely what happened. Not guilty on RICO, not guilty on trafficking, but with some of the other stuff, there's bad conduct. So let's look at the charges that did stick. 2 violations of something called the Mann Act. The Mann Act became law in 1910, and it has a horrible history of being used as a pretense to punish black people when white people were mad at them and had no real crime to charge, but just wanted a basis for surveillance. Jack Johnson was the first black world heavyweight boxing champion. He was prosecuted in 1913 for violating the Mann Act for transporting a white woman whose bills he was paying and who he later married across state lines. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was an influential black congressman and civil rights advocate. During the civil rights era, he was dogged while in Congress with questions about investigations and Mann Act violations. Recently declassified documents show that the Mann Act was the basis for the government to discredit and snoop around Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was who they were using this against. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. was never prosecuted under the Mann Act, but it was the Mann Act that J. Edgar Hoover used to get a surveillance predicate, to be able to get information regarding how MLK Jr. was spending his personal time. And then literally, because of that surveillance authority that they got from the Mann Act, you had people at the Department of Justice sending King letters trying to convince him to himself. We wonder whether Mann Act convictions will withstand appellate review in the Diddy case. But it's just something that the Mann Act can go from Jack Johnson to a congressman during the civil rights era, to Marcus Garvey, to Martin Luther King Jr., and now to Diddy. That's where we are on the Mann Act. And we really wonder whether or not there'll be an upholding of those convictions when people look at the facts that were used to arrive at them.
All right, so you guys just heard what Matt Gaetz had to say about the situation. Now, I want you guys to remember when Diddy first got arrested, the whole time I was lobbying for, arrest him, lock him up, throw away the key. You know what I'm saying? But then I started to notice racism. And that's when I started to pull back in my assessment in this whole particular case. I started to look at things for what they were. And I'm not anti-black to the point where I want to see a black man, no matter how horrific he's been, be jailed for the rest of his life when I see that racism is playing a part in how they're going about the case. And let me go ahead and stop right here and right now and clarify my position, because when I say that I'm not anti-black to a point, I want to make this very clear that I'm not anti-black at all. You guys know how I feel in regards to my people. I love us down, and I love everybody, white, blacks, Asians. It doesn't matter your race, color, or creed. I love you all. If you got respect and love for me, I got respect and love for you. But I think that a better analogy or a better setup would have been, I'm not so anti-Diddy to the point where that I can just sit back and not call out the racism that I see here. I can't do that. When I see it, I'm going to call it out, and I have to pull back and be like, no, I'm not running with this narrative, because I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to take this man down. And the fact that this man put up $50 million, right? Gave up his passports and things of that nature, and he still didn't make bail. But the CEO from Abercrombie Fitch was able to make bail and get out. And listen, I understand the fact that people were saying that Diddy is a danger to the alleged victims or whatever the case may be. But come to find out, he was locked up all this time, and there was a lot of things that were not proven in the court of law anyway, with him being behind bars. So how does that stand up? How does that hold up at the end of the day? So I just couldn't support this man being locked up and being treated the way that he's being treated, even though I can't stand him, even though it's still F Diddy. You know, I'll tell him to his face, I'm not on nobody's payroll. But logic is logic. I have to be honest and tell the truth about these things 100%. And on top of that, when you have a far right winger that's coming out telling the truth about the situation, and when you do your research, you find out that it's true, that the Mann Act was established basically to punish black people when white people got mad at them, nah. I just got to keep it real, because Diddy may be a lot of things. He's been proven to be a ABUSER. He's been proven to be a rug addict, and I'm paraphrasing there. He may be responsible for a few deletions like Kim Porter, Pac, Biggie, and etc., right? But those particular things right there have to be proven in the court of law. But the one thing that I will say about Diddy is that you will be hard pressed to find any video footage or to find any tweet, any Instagram post that suggests that Diddy wasn't for his people. He always stood behind black and brown people. Throughout elections, past elections, and things of that nature, he never sold us out. Now, again, what he did behind the scenes to artists, not paying them and all of that stuff, doing people wrong within the community, I understand that. But at the end of the day, throughout the years, Diddy has been one of the most vocal music moguls, black music moguls, that talked about the progression of his people publicly. And I have to respect that. So no, I'm not going to sit back and ignore the racism and act like it's not playing a part here and just look for him to be charged and go to jail for the rest of his life. No, I'm calling it all out. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's move along because I want to talk about Clayton Howard, the guy that was hired by Cassie and Diddy on a multitude of times as a SEX worker and things like that. I did a video a couple of days ago and I was asking the question, like, if you felt like you were so manipulated all the time to doing things that you didn't want to do, why did you keep going back? And he confirmed what I basically said it was in my last video. I want you guys to check out this clip or this audio, right? And then I'll be back.
One, I was in an economic position where I really needed the money. Two, Mr. Combs is incredibly powerful, and Miss Ventura had no problem ending her use of that power, which has actually been revealed now because we've heard recordings of her threatening people. We've seen text messages. There are many different sides to people, and even Cassie is a normal individual. She has herself. There's a side to her that people don't know, the side that manipulated Sean Combs' power, the side that embraced his power and his position to do things that she wanted. So I was always afraid if I stopped coming, then I would start having problems because she threatened me several times not to come and made me feel uncomfortable that I would come and see her just to avoid any problem with Sean Combs. He's incredibly powerful. He has people that could follow me around, damaging my life for years, and it would cost him nothing to do it. So I want to say I continued in the situation, but not as much. There was many times that I did stall them, flake on them as the word goes, and not show up. But I kept the relationship strong enough that they never thought I was trying to turn on them or betray their secrets. I have been trying to file litigation for this matter against Sean Combs and Cassie since I want to say March of 2024, maybe February. But I was represented by Tyrone Blackburn. And Tyrone Blackburn has a substantial amount of litigation against Sean Combs that the conviction of Sean Combs was dependent on him winning a lot of his civil cases. My attorney intentionally held the filing back to protect the credibility of Cassie. Tyrone Blackburn, he intentionally held it back. I have numerous communications to him where I am directly informing him to file. He would talk to the prosecutors and then he would duck me for weeks and not file the lawsuit. So this is why it was never filed. I feel he was working with them. He had conversations with them without me. He literally would disobey my direct instruction. I'm the client. I'm the one who's supposed to direct my attorney to make decisions. If I tell you to exercise a statute for a claim, as my attorney, you can either quit or you can do it. What Tyrone did was duck me into the statute of the Gender Motivated Violence Act that's expired this year, in March. He ducked me until maybe 48 hours before the expiration of the statute, so I wouldn't have enough time to draft the complaint that I filed myself that you found me with now. If the U.S. Attorney's Office knows all of this and investigated her, and instead of prosecuting her, allowed her to have immunity and didn't prosecute her, me going after her for criminal charges kind of makes like vindictive. And I don't want that. That's the mission of my lawsuit. The mission of my lawsuit is to obtain justice for the things that I truthfully know Cassandra did. It's not about having her put in prison. I don't want to destroy her life. She has 3 beautiful children. She seems happily married. The truth of the matter is she never created this facade of a lie. I would never be talking about this. No one would ever believe me that I had the relationship I had with Cassie. Cassie is the one who brought me forward. She did this to herself. I told the U.S. Attorney's Office the truth of both parties, that they were co-conspirators. They were involved. They verified hotel locations. I saw text messages between me and Cassie. The U.S. Attorney's Office knew that Cassie was criminally complicit, but Sean Combs was more important, so they totally ignored it. It makes no sense for me to try to get criminal charges. They don't care about male victims. They care about empowering Cassie, and forgive me for saying this, with the Me Too movement.
All right, so you guys just saw and heard all of that. And in my last video, when I was talking about this situation, and I asked the question, like, why would you keep going around if you felt like you were being manipulated and things like that and coerced to do things that you didn't want to do? And one of the suggestions that I made was it had to be out of fear. And he just confirmed that he was afraid that there would be some type of retaliation if he didn't show up for Diddy and Cassie. And it also seems that Cassie loved that power that Diddy had because she used it to her advantage. She felt that she was this woman that was sitting on top of the world because of who she was with. But anyway, in closing, I would like to ask all of the women to drop down in the comments and let me know how you feel about the question that I'm about to ask you guys. Do you think with Diddy getting off on the RICO charge, was it a big blow to the Me Too movement? Because it seems to be some type of growing sentiment online where there are a lot of men that are stating that the reason why they're mad about this Diddy situation is because that with him beating the RICO charges, it basically puts a dent in the Me Too movement. And listen, I'm an advocate for the Me Too movement. I think that there has been a bright light shed on all of the effery out there and things like that. I don't think that individuals can get away with disrespecting and violating women like they used to because the light is so bright on that particular situation. But I want you guys to drop down in the comments and let me know how you feel about that. But anyway, I'm gonna let this go right here. I want you guys to feel free again to drop down and give me your thoughts on everything that I talked about within this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and if you're new here, consider subbing to the channel. I'll get with you guys later. Peace.